We don't have sound.
I just texted him to let him know.
We need to start over.
Can you hear it now or no?
The weekly sermons of 45th Street Baptist Church are now available as a podcast through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts.
you know how powerful this is? Do you know what it means in your life? Or maybe I should ask the question, does it mean anything in your life? Until you learn how to study it and see what God is saying to you, you'll never really be able to fulfill your purpose. Come on and join us. Join us for 45 minutes of purpose here at 45th Street Baptist Church. I guarantee you, you'll come out thinking differently. And my prayer is, somewhere along the line, you'll find the purpose that God has for you. Come on in and join us.
Welcome to 45 Minutes of Purpose with Reverend Andre D. Sparks.
Well, hello. Welcome back for another edition of 45 Minutes of Purpose. My name is Andre Sparks, and I serve as senior pastor at 45th Street Baptist Church. And I can tell you that it's good to be here with you. I don't know how many of you get a chance to tune in early. If you hear sometimes the banter we have before we get things started, I want to thank Chandra Sparks Splund and Greg Splund for all the hard work they do in making sure that this gets together every week. Last week we had some technical difficulties, and it was all my fault. And so I'm glad we got all that worked out. And looking forward to this session. We're in session five of this Miracles in Mark Bible study. And we're in chapter 4 of the Gospel according to St. Mark. Chapter 4, we'll be starting at verse 35 in just a moment. But before we do, some, as we say, perhaps not always appropriate, but some housekeeping matters. Tomorrow morning, we will have the sad duty to have to go and to have the homegoing service for our own sister Odessa Cowan. She went on to be with the Lord at the ripe old age or ripe young age of 90. Her service will be a graveside service tomorrow. I want to ask you to continue to pray for her family, and especially so during this time when we can't get together and support them as we traditionally would do by visiting and sharing in-person conversations. So pray for her family, for children and her siblings and grandchildren and great-grands as they deal with grief in the time of COVID, which is not, I don't think, like grief at other times because of our inability to actually be in fellowship together. We'll be there tomorrow and we'll take care of all that we need to take care of. But can I say this to you? Sister Cowan had already handled all her business. So regardless of what we do on this side of glory, she's already claimed her eternal prize. And we thank God for that and thank God for her. I thank God for her followership and friendship. I thank God for her supportiveness throughout all these many years that I've known her. And we'll see her one more time over in glory. I also want to tell you this, in case you're not paying attention. If you have the ability to stay put, stay put. Don't go out. Don't be involved in all this stuff going on right now. There's too much COVID in the community. Many of the businesses don't want to shut down for a lot of reasons. They need to make money to take care of their families, but it's dangerous, very dangerous out there. And so make sure you stay safe. Keep the kids safe. You'll see a lot of, I think, governmental organizations pulling back a little bit. So get all you need. We're going to kind of be in a posture like we're in at the first part of the year. So get all you need and make sure you have all your necessaries. And if you don't have them and somebody can help you, let us know so we can support you. Amen. That's what we can do. I know that. And sometimes if you're ordering stuff online, be patient because the wait times are going to be a little bit longer when it comes to deliveries. Okay, this will be the last Bible study we have this month. We won't gather next week for Bible study on Wednesday since it's the night before Thanksgiving. And I would imagine you'll be making your fixings for the holiday. That's another thing about the holidays, they're recommending that we not bring in all those folks because we don't know where they've been and what they've been doing. And so be careful. And we're not talking about strangers now. They're talking about family members and the friends you know. Be careful bringing them in as well, because they too can be carriers of COVID and not know that they are. So on another note, celebrating, a good friend I've grown up with, Faye Jones, I think was released from the hospital today. I got a message. She's been in the hospital for so long. And I got a message today that she's on her way to the house. And we've been praying for Faye and her getting better. And I know getting out of the hospital is a better step for her. And the message I got said there was going to be a piece on Fox News or something, or Channel 6 for her. I don't know what that's about, but I'm just thankful that she gets to go home, and I know her family's ecstatic as well. Okay, let's go into this Bible study. Gospel according to St. Mark. We've been talking about how Jesus uses miracles to proclaim and exclaim and show that he is the Messiah. That's important that people understand that he's the Messiah. And so all these miracles have teaching points, but they are also the fulfillment of prophecy. So let me see if I can read it and get us a foundation for what we're going to be talking about. Starting at verse 35 of chapter 4. On that day, when evening came, he said to them, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd, they took him along with them in the boat, just as he was. And that's important, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And there arose a fierce gale of wind, and the waves were breaking over the boat so much that the boat was already filling up. Jesus himself was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he got up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Hush, be still." And the wind died down and it became perfectly calm. And he said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" And they became very much afraid and said one to another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" And they came together on the other side of the sea into the country of the Gerasenes. Now, let me say this. I love the way this reads in the King James Version. And it's probably got some of the most quoted passages in the King James Version. This reads a little bit different. It's just a little bit more poetic. For example, in verse 38, in the King James Version, I think it reads, "Master, carest thou not that we perish?" And then of course, verse 39 reads that Jesus stood up and said, "Peace, be still," which is all quoted. And then sometimes I want you to go and look at passages of scripture just in different contexts. If you have a computer and you have the ability to go to different versions of the Bible, just read it in there sometimes, just so you can see how it is. Be careful. Make sure that the New Translation does not change the intent that was in the passage. Sometimes you can't know that until you go and do some studying. But in these two that we've read today, in this one that I've read today in the King James Version, of course, you get a clear picture of what's happening with the disciples. Jesus and the disciples are rock stars. You know that. We've been reading it in chapter 4. All along, he's been just whipping through the country, and he's been healing lepers and healing people after preaching all night long, and folks have been cutting into the roof to bring folks through the roof down so he can heal people who can't walk. And then he even doesn't stop on the weekend taking care of business of taking care of folk. He's healing people with withered hands as we talked to with a withered man with a withered hand like he did last Sunday. He's tired. He's tired. People who say you don't get tired doing the Lord's work probably have been doing much of the Lord's work. Because the Lord's work is taking care of people, taking care of situations. And I know we find joy in doing that, but boy, can it be also physically exhausting. I love this statement. It was from a source unknown. I put it on your outline if you got it. I don't know how many of you have gotten your outlines. If you have not, you should get them from there. She can email them to you or mail them to you, or you can pick them up at the church. We prefer you get them through email or we can mail them. Just let us know. Sometimes God calms the storm, but sometimes he lets the storm rage and he calms his child. Very, very thought-provoking, and nobody knows who had the wisdom to put pen to paper on that, probably someone who had experienced it. But let me ask you this, who do you build your foundation on? Who have you built your foundation on? What are you sure of in terms of your walk with the Lord? Have you built it on Christ? Or have you built it on temporal things? You still dependent on a job and people and circumstances and connections? Or do you draw strictly from the grace of God and whatever it is he has for you? Which one is it? Which one do you depend on? Because if you're connected to Jesus Christ, then you got to know that you can draw on the power he has at all times. You're connected to that source. Then it doesn't matter what problems come up, you're going to be okay. You got to look to him in all circumstances, even when they look really, really difficult. And that's tough. He really is connected to you. That's hard for people to believe and understand. He's the foundation. The analogy that's used in the Bible is that he's a vine. We're connected to him. Each one of us. He's our elder brother. Each one of these definitions shows some intimacy of connectedness. He's our advocate. He's our advocate. That means something. He's the king of all the kings. I love that. King of kings. He's the Lord over all the lords. And he's also the Christ. And he came to save us from what we are naturally, from our sins, from ourselves. He's ours. And sometimes we act like we have a business relationship with him. It's like it's transactional. If I do ABC, then he does ABC for me. And now, can I tell you, you can't do enough for him to love you the way he does. Whether your transactions are many or nothing, he's still Jesus the Christ. We still can receive of his grace when we have nothing to offer him except ourselves and faith. He's still the Christ. Don't get lost in the foolishness that comes from thinking you can do something to earn your salvation and relationship with him, because it just doesn't work that way. He is bigger than anything you got, better than anything you could possibly have. And I'm so thankful that we have our ability to have a relationship with him. That being said, let me make sure you understand this, that having a relationship with him will not stop you from having problems and sorrow. He is not, I always use this term, you can put it in whatever context. He's not a raincoat or prophylactic from us having problems in the world. People can get disappointed behind that. You know, I signed up. I'm part of the gang. I'm part of the group. I'm part of the church. Why is all this stuff happening to me? This example that we've read in the Bible of Christ and his followers leaving, doing the hard work of the church, And as they're leaving, healing and helping and changing folks' lives, they're making a difference in folks' lives. They're being heard and people are converting and they're following Jesus Christ. As soon as they leave doing that kind of work, they get into a storm. It's like that in life. We can be doing our best for the Lord. And still things happen. Suddenly, a storm is about you. Just like these folks in the boat. Suddenly, we're not talking about non-believers. We're talking about Jesus and his disciples, the core group, the main ones. They're the ones who are in the middle of the storm. And Jesus is on the boat, right there in the Lake of Galilee. Sudden storm jumps up. And I'm told because of the topography, because of the way the Sea of Galilee is sitting there, right there between those mountain ranges, that it's not uncommon for fierce storms to come in suddenly and whip up a storm right there in that bowl where the Sea of Galilee is. Just not uncommon. And because of the way it's made, those storms can be mighty powerful when they come down. And it's because of the way it's made, they can come in suddenly, and I mean without warning, and they can do some real damage. That's what's happening in this situation. The disciples are in this boat. Obviously, it's big enough for them to be in it, but don't have any idea that this is some kind of mini yacht or mini ocean liner. These men are sitting there, fishermen, some of them are exposed to the elements, trying to keep themselves dry as best they can, which is impossible, warm, because of course, that wind is going to bring in, it's going to be freezing out there on that water. It's at night, it's tough. And Jesus is in the back of the boat, y'all, sleeping like a baby. Not even concerned, they think, about what's going on. You know, when something like this is going on, you're supposed to have Fox 6 on. It's making sure you know a weather alert. That's what they got us. We weather alert. But I don't know how you get weather alert in some of the storms that come up in life. I don't know if you can prepare yourself and have your little kit ready. Because sometimes they come in so fierce and they take you so completely unaware that you're not even able to prepare yourselves fully for it. All you know is whoever you're going to depend on, whatever you're going to need, you need to already have that lined up. And I came to tell you, in life, things can come about you so fast that you need to make sure and very sure that you and your relationship with the Lord are all right, because that storm can come real fast. And so following Christ won't prevent you from having earthly problems, earthly troubles. It just won't happen. You're gonna in this walk, you're gonna have sickness and pain and sorrow. In this life, you're gonna have tears and you're gonna lose things and people, and you're gonna have some crosses to bear in this life. It's just gonna happen. I'm not wishing that on anybody. That's just a part of it. The way you have to walk and the way you have to talk, the way you have to present yourself as a believer in Christ is going to put you at odds with the world system. And because it puts you at odds with the world system, you're going to have some trouble. In fact, I might dare say that you need to check yourself if you're never having any problems with the world system. If you're going along so well with the world system that it never creates any ripples, you need to be praying and asking the Lord, am I following and doing your purpose, your will and your way? People always talk about keeping it real these days. Sometimes it's not real from a Christian perspective. It's real from a worldly perspective, because people want to have it both ways. They want to carry a cross, but it needs to be fashionable. And that's a problem. There's nothing fashionable about the cross we carry. There's nothing nice about it. A cross is a cross. It's an implement of torture and pain and destruction. Only when Jesus Christ got on it did it turn into a symbol of hope. And so be careful when you're carrying your cross. Make sure It's not fashionable for folk to want to carry a cross like that. They shouldn't want. Nobody should want to have to go through what Jesus went through on the cross. And nobody has to, because he paid all the price we ever need. All we need to do is believe in it. And so I'm asking you, you can't get what you want. Do you know what you're going to depend on, or who you're going to depend on? I can't sit here and tell you. I've been commissioned to teach you about the Lord, to show you the ways and the will of the Lord. Yeah. And I come to you regularly in his name, and I offer peace, and I offer pardon, and I offer the grace that he has, teach you about the glory that he has, but I can't promise you long life. Can't do that. I can't promise you a life free from pain and no sorrow. I can't do that. I can't do that. That's not part of the commissioning package that I have. I can't assure you that everything's going to be absolutely all right. I just can't do it. There are going to be storms in life. Yeah. But there are a whole lot of folk who would like to have Christ and only good health, Christ and a lot of money, Christ and no deaths in their family, Christ and no cares or concern, Christ and a perpetual morning without any clouds in the sky. That's what they want. They want to be able to be happy and whistling all day long. And I came to tell you, there's no Christ without the cross. There's no Christ without some tribulation. There's no Christ without conflict. No Christ without howling winds and storms coming up in your life. And if you got Christ, guess what? There's going to be storms in your life. Question is, what do you do when those storms come? How do you deal with them? Well, the first thing you got to know is that if you got to have a storm in your life, you got the right one with you. You do. All right? And think about this now. How do you ever tell who the real believers are if the storms never come in your life? See, it's the storms that come. It's the wind that comes and blows the wheat from the chaff, the substance from the nothingness. It's the wind that come along. How you respond in those circumstances is essential to you being a believer. The winds of winter show which of the trees are truly evergreen, because only those who stand tall through their plumage will remain, and those whose leaves are not evergreen will blow away. Such as it is with believers. When you truly believe in him, when you truly follow him, it's the storms in life that come along and show who you really are. That's what the sanctification you have in you really, really means. He's preparing you for the work that he had you to do. And if he prepares you for it, he'll be with you. Trouble, I'm going to tell you this. People always beg off trouble. Don't ever want any problems, but trouble has led many a person to the Lord. Many times they wouldn't hear it from their mama and their daddy. And it wasn't until trouble came and grabbed them by the hand, drug them down the block for a little while, that they started hearing and listening to the stories about a man named Jesus. Yeah, many folk who couldn't meet Christ in church ran into him and hugged him in a jail cell, wouldn't let him go. That's what trouble will do for you. And so people keep begging off trouble for folks in their family and for themselves, but it's sometimes trouble that comes along and cements your relationship with the Lord. The Lord was not unacquainted with what we've gone through. He's truly a man. He's really a man. You got to put that into your belief system, that he understands and understood what we went through. Guess what? He's on the boat. Like any other man who's been working for a while, doing all the hard things that he had to do, pressing the flesh, talking to folk, hugging, healing, helping. He's exhausted. He's weary. The disciples are trying to get him out of the crush of the demands on him, and he gets to a place where he suddenly can just be himself. And guess what, y'all? He does what any one of us would do. He falls asleep. You know how it is when you get to a place where you feel okay. Somebody's looking out for you, you can fall asleep. That's so very important. And that's exactly what he does. He falls asleep. And it's one of those deep sleep, those sleeps where you're not worried about anything. Of course, Jesus Christ didn't worry. He had such a good relationship with the Father. He knew he was going to be all right. And since he understood and runs everything, he had no need to fear anything. He's literally in the boat, exhausted. And he's sleeping. Sleep is important. I've been talking about sleep a lot lately. Been going through this study with some groups of the fraternity that got us wearing one of these trackers to see how much we walk, how much we move, and how much we eat every day. And one of the things it does is track how much we sleep and the different stages we go through when we sleep. And it's interesting because of the different stages you go through. Just because you're in the bed all night doesn't mean you're actually resting. All right. And it's that restful sleep that we're all trying to get. And sometimes I get up at night and I've been in the bed for 6 hours and I've only rested for 2 of them. Sometimes it's hard for us to turn it off. That's just the way it is. We got to get to a place where we can get more restful sleep because God has designed the body such that it can regenerate, such that it can cleanse itself, can go through a revamping and push all of those toxins and all that stuff out that you put in every day. And the next day you can wake up. And that's where you get that feeling of being refreshed because you've literally been rejuvenated. And when you never get to that place, that's an unhealthy place for you to be in. And Jesus is in here right now in this boat, getting him some good REM sleep, rapid eye movement. That time when you're into that, you're actually getting some good sleep. And that's what he's doing. And the disciples are standing over him and they can see every raindrop fall. That's how scared they are. The disciples can feel every willow wisp of wind. That's how afraid they are. Jesus is in the same space they are. And because of his relationship with the Father, none of it bothers him and all of it bothers them. That tells you the degree of faithlessness they have under the circumstances. Look, they've been watching him. They've been seeing him. They see the results. They know he's healing, that he's making people better. And yet they're still petrified because of the storm. Petrified. Don't know what to do. Don't know how to get through the process. They forgot that it's not just a man on the boat with them, but it's Jesus. There's a difference when you got Jesus on board, not just any other man. No, it's not. Now, let me tell you, Jesus had the same issues we had. Yeah, he feels what we feel. I love this about him. He's like us. All right, he was a pauper, a poor man. He knew what it felt like to be condescended to. He knew what it felt like to be hungry and thirsty and to faint and be weary. He knew that. He had to eat. He had to drink. He's resting now. He's sleeping now. He was sorry about things, sorrowful. He wept. He cried. He had a frail body like ours. He knew what it felt like to skin his knees. But he also knows grace and he knows pity and he knows love. Yeah. And so I grow comfort. I get comfort from knowing that Jesus Christ knew feels what I feel. You ought to as well. He's not just a man, but he's also our high priest who can intercede for us in front of God the Father. But he can go there and say, Father, I know what they are going through. He can sympathize with us as one who has walked the same walk we have, touched in every way by our infirmities, except he did it without sin. Yeah, he knew what it felt like not to have all the patience in the world. He knew sympathy. And you want somebody walking the walk with you who can sympathize with you. Listen, people put a whole lot of stock in folk who can give money for circumstances. I'd rather have somebody who understands what I'm going through than just somebody who can buy me out of a situation. Sympathy can go a whole lot further than money can. And it's more purposeful and it's rarer than you can ever imagine. Because people, you can give and not care. Watch me now. You can give your gold and not care about the person you're giving it to. Sympathy is much, much better. When you touch someone, you touch their heart, then they're willing to walk the walk with you and not just give you a little bit of something to get down the road. Yeah. Sometimes people want to come and they want to give you advice, but it's cold advice because they're just giving you the advice any person would give. They're not sympathizing with your circumstances. But Jesus is not that kind of Lord. He's the one who has felt what we've been through. Think about it now. Think about who Jesus was and how he grew up. You know he's familiar with being bullied. He was bullied in his own family. They didn't believe he was as good as he was. His brothers were probably telling him, Jesus, you need to knock him in his head and keep moving. That wasn't him, though. So he understood what it was to have folks not understand who you are. And yet he was brave to keep on pushing. And he was sympathetic. Jesus, this is our mediator. He's our mediator. This is the man we have talking to God, the Father, for us. You ought to say that to yourself. I got Jesus on my side. And that's a big thing to say. He's not so out of touch as some folks are. Not so out of touch that he does not understand what you've gone through in life. He knows who you are. He knows you. Watch this now. He knows you. He knows all those circumstances. And so when you're going through a storm, you shouldn't ask yourself, does Jesus care? You shouldn't ask yourself, does he know? I came to tell you today, of course he knows. He's been through it himself. This man knows flattery and foolishness. Yeah, he knows work and fun. We see all this in scripture. Crying and laughter. He knows it. He knows the feeling of sweat running down his brow. He knows the feeling of a cool breeze after a good day's work. He knows the feeling of harmony that comes from sitting with friends and people who truly care for you. He knows the fear that comes when people want to try to harm you. He knows us. He knows us. He's experienced homelessness. He's experienced not having anything to call his own and yet being confident that everything is going to be okay. That's the kind of man you want to have in your life. Guess what? He came from the wrong city, not just the wrong side of the track. He came from the wrong city. John 1:46, quote, the writers quoted and said, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? The wrong city. How many of y'all seem to get talked about because you come from the wrong side of the community? Jesus knows about that. Yeah, look at this. He didn't have anything to call his own. If you look through his life, you can see he was a master borrower. Yeah, he preached in a borrowed boat, came to town on a borrowed animal. He was even buried in a borrowed tomb. Jesus didn't have to have his own stuff in order to be effective and to leave a legacy. This is Jesus. This is who we depend on. This is the same Jesus. And so I don't want you not knowing who your foundation is. If you've got him on board the ship of your life, if y'all in the same fellowship, then the storms can come and you've got someone who's going to take care of you, who's going to make sure you're all right. And it's okay. There is weakness and infirmity, even in true Christians. You don't have to worry about being so fierce and so untouchable. It's okay to deal with life and have frailties because Jesus knows all about the problems we have. All right? He cares. So you don't have to say, Master, do you care what's going on with me in my life? Like those disciples who have been around him all that time said. You don't have to say, Jesus, don't you care? The fact that he died for you tells you that he cares. They should already have known from what they seen that he had the ability. He hadn't died yet, but he was marching to the cross with him every day. And so they get up, they wake him up impatiently, like he doesn't know what's happening. They're impatient when they go to him. And you can imagine they shake him up. You know how it feels when you're in one of them good sleeps and somebody comes and wakes you up like something's wrong. And in this instance, something was wrong. So they wake him up in the middle of it. And he gets up and gets into action immediately. The reason they woke him up is because they were impatient. They didn't even wait to see if he was going to wake up on his own through the storm. They didn't see that. Not only that, they woke him up because they didn't believe in the safety they would have with him. They thought they were going to die with Jesus on board. So they woke him up. They were afraid of the storm, not realizing they had the storm maker on board. Oh, yeah. The one who made the drops of water that turned into the storm, the one who made the breeze that turned into the wind. This is the same Jesus who's on board with them right now. So when they ask him, do you care if we perish? They really reveal their lack of faith to Jesus Christ. They forgot who he was, even though they had seen it with their own eyes. They said, we're about to die. So that begs the question, and I'm going to ask you this. Think about this. At this point in their walk with Jesus, after all that they had seen, who do you think they thought he was? What is the answer to that question? Who is this man on the boat that we're trying to get away from all these folks? Surely they know he's supernatural. And yet, even in the face of that supernatural, they're afraid. They were also distrustful. Maybe not so much of Jesus. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. When they ask him if he cared, you mean you can care more about a man who let down through the roof than you do with the folk who walk with you every day? You can care more about a leper you never met before than the men you're with every day. You can care more about a man you met in the temple last week whose hand you healed than you do with the folk you walk with every day. They don't trust Jesus. And so they wake him up. They're faithless. That's how we are sometimes. We forget our foundational information when we're faithless. They had all the proof in the world right there in front of them. But sometimes when we are afraid, it's just normal. We can come up with some situational amnesia. We forget how good God has been to us. We forget all the things we've seen. We forget all the circumstances that have been before us. And we forget who we got in our boat with us. Some people become fair weather followers under those circumstances. They can only believe that he's good when the weather is good. When the storms aren't blowing, he's all right. But when the storms are blowing, I don't know where I am or what I'm in right now. Jesus is the same when he's sleeping and when he's awake. Jesus is the same whether you see him or you don't see him. In all the circumstances of your life, he loves you and he's with you at every turn. And we understand people are going to have problems. He understands that. But he's still Jesus. And so they wake him. And that's when we see the power of Jesus Christ. Because he simply stands up and he says to the storm, peace, be still. Think about that now. The Bible says that the miracle in this is that as soon as Jesus stood up and spoke, the wind stopped blowing and the rain stopped falling. Think about that now. The rain is falling from clouds, but immediately it blanched. It stopped. In other words, when Jesus commanded it to behave itself, it dare not fall on another place because the master has said to stop. The wind dare not move another blade of grass, cause another leaf to move because the master has commanded it to stop. That's the power he has in your life. When he commands problems to stop, they cease immediately. That's why it's a miracle It didn't die down, it died. It didn't slow down, it stopped. That's the miracle. If you turn the fan off in your car, if you turn the air conditioning off in your house, it's going to have to wind down a little bit. That's not how Jesus worked. When he says stop, he means stop. And the only one that could do that is somebody who's almighty. When the problems in your life get to a place that Jesus is going to say, peace, be still, everything obeys him. He cares. And he can stop everything from happening that should not be happening. Any fear you feel, you should replace it with faith in Jesus Christ. And so watch this now, and then I'm out of here this week. He could have been upset with them for all they had seen and had been through. He could have turned to them and chastised them for not understanding and believing, but that's just not the kind of God we serve. No, he loves us enough even to understand when we're fearful, because he's been there. He's been in that place when fear can be a part of life. Instead, he turns to them and he just asks them a question in a teaching method, teaching manner. He says to them, why are you so fearful? What is it about me you're not seeing? What is it that you don't understand that I'm showing you? I'm teaching you as much as I can that I am the Son of God. What else do I need to do to convince you, those who are around me, that I am who I say I am? And then he asked the question, how is it that you have no faith? King James says, "O ye of little faith." Not, let me give you this now. Let me give you this because I want to put it in context. He didn't call them out and try to chastise them for having no faith. That's why I love this version. He said, why is your faith so small? You got more faith in this boat than you have in me. You got more faith that the wind can harm you than I can protect you. And Jesus is saying to him, I'm with you. So by his very act of standing up and saying, peace, be still, it's just like the mama who chases the dog rushing the child. He's saying, I can protect you. And by me protecting you, you should know that I love you. That's Jesus. He's chasing the big dogs out of your life. He's chasing the big storms out of your life. I know you're sitting there right now with your hair messed up and maybe even dripping wet from the storms of your life, but know this, he can come along and stop them and bring peace to your life. That's Jesus. Do you trust him? Do you know him? He's waiting on you to have faith in him. It's been a great week to be with you. My prayer is that you will absolutely have a wonderful Thanksgiving next week. I'm going to put some information out this week about a special Thanksgiving service we're going to have on Wednesday for our prayer service. I think we're going to do something a little bit different that morning. Look out for it. Tune in, come in and pray with us because we need some folk who understand the power of thankfulness this year. Seems like everybody wants to talk about what's been taken, but I can look and see what's been given. Prepare yourselves for a wonderful celebration for you and your family. I'll see you next month on 45 Minutes of Purpose. God bless you. Take care. I love you.